Desperately maneuvering the carpet to avoid the tree's attacks, Tino let out a scream. "See, helpen! T. Do you remember where the manipulators are set? Follow the line," Citri shouted back. Citri had no way of knowing the state of the mana material in the area, but what Seelan had said must have tipped her off. She was planning to ensure their success by using this tree. What for? Just do it, T. If you won't, then give me the carpet. I'll do it. Though the tree's swipes weren't particularly fast, they came in great numbers. It wasn't clear what might happen to Tino should she be caught, but surely it would be nothing good. Seeing her previous self in the girl's blanching face, Seelan averted her gaze. Unfortunately, she couldn't demand that the girl stop running away. There was nothing Seelan could do. But then the tree came to a sudden stop, ceasing its pursuit of Tino. Its outstretched branches stopped clawing at her. The forest grew silent. Chris, equally as stupefied as Seelan, looked up at the tree. "It stopped? What are you planning? Sir, we don't even know what it is we're looking at. Is it something that can be controlled?" Given the lengths Tino had been forced to go to avoid getting swatted, it was hard to think the tree could be controlled. Seelan took another good look at the stationary beast. Its trunk and leaves were all dark enough to inhale the sunlight. Its roots were big enough to transport its immense body, its trunks wider than those of trees as old as Yggdra. Staring at it discomforted her in some indescribable way. She felt some instinctual feeling of disgust. A tree that could absorb the limitless mana material in the air needed to be kept away from this forest. What a deplorable tree. Lewin looked at it with a strained expression. Even Finnis, a guardian elemental of Yggdra, is unsettled. Above him, Finnis the desiccator trembled as if in fear. This was the first time she had seen such an expression on her calm and reliable friend. Lewin was also seeing the tree for the first time, apparently. Seelan had told herself she would be willing to swallow poison if it meant saving the world, but perhaps she had been speaking prematurely. Frozen by her brother's insane plan, the blood drained from Lucia's face. We need to run," she screamed. Her voice was filled with terror, more than it ever was during her battle with Finnis. "That thing targets powerful mana. It's hesitating because it's found so much prey." The tree began to move once more. Those rapid, whip-like branches tore through the earthen warriors and came for Seelan. Seeing them up close, they moved faster than she had realized. She dodged by leaping to the side. The forest was taking on a hellish appearance. It seemed the tree had decided to go for all of them at once. Run, cried Lapis's dignified voice. "Don't let yourself get caught. Gotta be kidding me. Stupid human weakling." Everyone in Starlight dashed off at once. The branches were already reaching for them. After a second's delay, Lewin sprinted away, and Seelan followed suit. The branches weren't extraordinarily fast, but still quick enough that she had to be careful. If she didn't run at full speed, she was sure to be caught. The branches were targeting Starlight, as well as Lucia, Lewin, and Seelan. Though Lucia pounded the tree with arrows of ice as she dodged its attacks, the Great Arbor didn't slow for a moment. Liz, who wasn't being targeted for some reason, ran off with Lucia. "Please try to move in the same direction," Citri, not among those being targeted, called from the shadow of a tree. She almost sounded as though she was enjoying herself. "You remember where the manipulators were set, don't you? Please try to redirect the flow of mana material." And so began a brutal game of chase, one in which being caught had to be avoided at all costs. Their first meeting had been a coincidence. Finding out that the Thousand Tricks was a kindred spirit had been both startling and exciting. After being defeated by his phantom army, she had been both bitter over their defeat and elated at the prospect of new possibilities. Seeing him rescue Lewin had been chilling, yet also provided her the opportunity to discern how to tame a phantom. And yet, what Adler now saw through the manifest mirror shocked more than anything else she had seen him do. "So this is the preterhuman artifice of the Thousand Tricks," she said with a chuckle. "They said his quest completion rate is perfect, but this is unbelievable." She felt no joy. Her hopes for the future, her drive to one day surpass the 1,000 tricks, had all been decimated. Between them existed a vast gap that could never be closed, no matter what great monsters she might someday tame. Strategical know-how was important to a guiding hand, but not a top priority, or so she had thought. She had thought that a guiding hand's top priority should be traveling the world and gathering powerful monsters. However, she would never, not a million years, win against these talents. Truly, pre-human artifice was the domain of only those who surpassed the bounds of humanity. What he had hidden up his sleeve, his ability to control situations, and even his exceptional courage. Her assumption that she understood the gap between them was nothing more than an assumption. Closing her eyes, she could vividly recall a segment of what she had seen through the manifest mirror. That man had ridden some carpet with Tino, then landed near the world tree. He summoned a ghost and a black knight. Then that staff grew to enormous proportions and, finally, it returned the phantoms to noble spirits. I never thought he'd try to save 'em all. How'd he lure out only the ones that had been noble spirits? That tree is also quite the enigma. I don't know if it's a monster or not, but he doesn't appear to be controlling it. It must have been resting while in that staff form. Kint clenched his fist. It didn't occur to me that he might use a monster he can't control. Is this one of those goddamn dragon gambits? He said with disgust. A dragon gambit was a tactic with a long history. It was a highly risky move that entailed controlling the movements of a dragon, a monster of tremendous power, to break through an opponent's otherwise overwhelming advantage. Adler had once looked down on this tactic. Such risky measures were for weaklings. Besides, to a guiding hand, powerful monsters were something to be conquered. If you couldn't handle a creature, that simply meant you needed more training. She had apprenticed herself to the 1,000 tricks so that she might absorb his skills and one day surpass him. But now, Nocturnal Parade had lost in their hearts before their battle could even begin. Just like Adler, neither Uno nor Kint had any remaining will to fight. That man was blinding, he was unconstrained. He maintained constant composure, not even flinching after looking into the eyes of a god. The chasm between them was too wide for Adler to so much as dream of ever crossing it. Now she stood in fear of the 1,000 tricks. It was the same fear that hunters and armies would feel when coming face to face with Uden. Guiding hands didn't use magic or anything of the sort when commanding monsters. Charisma was what drove monsters to obey. And so guiding hands were obligated to be indomitable. Monsters wouldn't follow a sovereign who no longer appeared as such or one who showed weakness. Adler figured that man would do something about the world tree's rampancy. In fact, she was sure he would put a stop to it. However, even if they made it out of this alive, Nocturnal Parade would be done for unless she acted fast. This was a bad spot to be in. Someone defeated emotionally could never become a sovereign. She had to do something to change the situation. Only, the 1,000 tricks was just too powerful. Adler had lost to him even with her forces in peak condition. That tree wasn't strong enough to directly suck mana material from the ley lines, Uno said gravely. That's probably why the 1,000 tricks recommended the simultaneous use of the manipulators, so the tree could absorb the energy dispersed by the devices. And that let it grow. Lady Adler, I believe that that tree may be capable of defeating Shrine of the Effluent God. Her imploring gaze wanted to know what Nocturnal Parade would do next. Uno Silber was a clever girl. She understood what was happening. A champion, is he? Adler muttered. That man would someday make history. She was sure of it. What Adler chose to do would determine how history would one day regard Nocturnal Parade. It wouldn't be long before the 1,000 tricks reached their post. They needed to decide where they wanted to stand in all this. If they were to rendezvous with the 1,000 tricks as they currently were, they would become nothing more than a group defeated by him, subordinated to him, taken under his wing. Neither his friends nor his foes would call it a pitiful epithet. However, fighting him would be a death wish. Uden had been bolstered by mana material, and the Ripper was still capable of opening rifts, but those powers had already proven ineffectual against the 1,000 tricks. Hold on. If it's that man we're talking about, Then even if he can tame the phantoms of that vault. No, we're not out of this yet. There's still one way we can beat that man. Tchem. Without realizing it, her spear hand had started shaking, a result of the terrifying plan that had just dawned on her. Revelation was a fitting term for it. It hit her like a lightning bolt. Her heart was going off like a bell. The tips of her hands and feet felt frigid. Struck by a wave of vertigo, she gripped her spear. It was a stratagem she never would have thought up even a few hours prior. That such an absurd idea ever occurred to her must have been a result of the Thousand Tricks' influence. Steadying her breath, she considered the feasibility of her plan. Adler, ruler of monsters and enemy of many nations. The way she had been going, even if she hadn't gotten involved with grieving souls, it wouldn't have been long before her name was known throughout the world. That future, however, had now been cut off from her. But if she pulled this off, she would be an enemy to all of humanity. No, she didn't need everything to go well. She just needed her revenge, even if it was just a small taste. There was no guarantee what might result. The risks were astronomical. And she needed Uno's cooperation. Taking a deep breath, she looked at her comrades. Her plan was a dangerous one. Without proper determination, anxiety could get the better of them. Uno, Kint. We're Nocturnal Parade. Losing without putting up a fight is not how we do things, she shouted. With a twirl of her spear, she slammed it into the mana material manipulator. She did it once, twice, and a third time, shattering the glass tube, sending fragments flying. Uno and Kint silently watched. I mean what I said. To surrender would be as good as dying. We're no longer that man's apprentices. Nocturnal Parade is going to take that man on. Are you two coming with me? Oh, I suppose I have to. But do we really have a chance of victory? Shit. I'll go along. I can't show myself in front of Zork if I don't get back at that guy. Let's do this. Neither of them showed any hesitation. Uno was calm and collected, and Kint still had plenty of courage in him. Nocturnal Parade wasn't over yet. With a genuine smile, Adler began explaining her plan to her comrades. The Black World tree walked like it owned the expansive forest. Atop the flat surface of its head, I clung to the last vestiges of the staff as I gazed at the towering form of the true world tree. The situation down below appeared to have changed again. After being lured by Tino to Citri's position, the Black World tree had started chasing Lucia and the other Magi. I should have realized this would happen when I saw how the tree reacted to the hair from Starlight. That staff really was a menace if it could feast on so many phantoms and still want more energy. Any new phantoms that appeared during the rampage were equally helpless against the monstrous tree, to the point that I found it amazing they ever stopped this thing back in the Imperial capital. I'm not gonna forget this, sir. Can't you stop it, brother? It was totally quiet up on the tree's head. Beyond the very faint traces of Chris and Lucia's voices, all I could hear was the wind. I didn't have the luxury of paying any mind to those distant shouts. I was being rocked from side to side. I felt like I might vomit. Not rushing to get perfect vacation back from Sealin was proving to be a huge mistake. While the movements weren't that intense, enduring the sensation for an extended duration had made me nauseous. Protracted, gentle swaying attacks were one of the few attacks safety rings couldn't protect against. Looking at the world tree, I calmed myself. No matter how many times I laid eyes on it, that tree, with its massive falling leaves and never-ending branches, struck me as grandiose and bizarre. Even after looking up to the sky, I still couldn't see past the top of the trunk. How much mana material did it need to grow this big? The Black World tree would probably need thousands of years to attain a similar size. After outgrowing the great trees of the forest in a matter of minutes, it had stopped getting any bigger. I was willing to bet that it could only grow so rapidly at the start. From here on, it would have to slowly expand over years and years. Next to me, Murrin and the Black Knight were clinging on for dear life, just as I was, and looking at the world tree with confusion. Good work out there, I said. You've really done a lot for me, so you can go home now. I'll make sure to really enhance that stuffed bear. I'll kill you, Murrin shot back. Glaring at me spitefully, shoved the bear off onto me, then disappeared. The Black Knight did the same before I realized it. I put the bear inside Mimikry, so I wouldn't lose it. Though they weren't as strong as I had expected, they still surpassed me, and I might need them again someday. I had to be sure to stay on their good side. Hit with another wave of nausea, I set my eyes back on the world tree. And then I realized something. The downpour of leaves from the tree had lessened just ever so slightly. The plan seemed to be working, and of course it was one of Citri's. Unlike me, she didn't just go stumbling around in the dark. Just as my nausea and helplessness were really starting to get to me, the black world tree came to an abrupt halt. The staff grew a bit before sprouting a small bud that blossomed into a purple flower. It was similar to what had happened at the end of the rampage at the academy. The tree remained still. Perhaps it was satiated. I gently plucked the flower and let out a sigh. Finally, a break. Man, I'm tired. Never go lending out powerful relics. After putting the flower in Mimikry, I decided to lie down for a bit. I wasn't a big fan of high places, but the unobstructed sky was delightful. I could think of what to do about this tree once Citri and the others arrived. Once I was standing on something stable, my nausea had eased up. I was letting out a yawn and rubbing my eyes when Tino arrived with Krai. Just the person I wanted to see. I was thinking it'd be nice to get down from here. With my safety rings, I could have gotten away with jumping down, but I preferred something gentler. Good work, Tino, and perfect timing. Sorry, but could you help me down? Tino's complexion was awful. Her austere determination had faded, her cheeks were now pulled taut. Clearing her throat, she looked at me with the eyes of a timid critter. Master, there's a lot I'd like to say, but for now, is it all over? How the heck should I know? With nothing to say, I simply smiled. Tino smiled back, though she looked ready to cry. When we reached the ground, I saw that the Black World tree had wrought less destruction than I had expected. I guess that despite its size, those pliant roots it used for feet lessened its impact. All that really got battered were my allies. I thought we might perish, Celine whispered. Shoulders heaving, she held a hand against a tree. Our offensive spells had no effect. Chmph. I don't know how you led that thing by the nose, but you're pragmatic as ever. Hey, human weakling. I'm not gonna be petty, but there's something I want to know. Sir, was it really necessary for us to get chased around like that? I could have been imagining it, but Lapis's voice seemed coated with more disdain than usual. Chris, meanwhile, had tears in her eyes. Similarly, the other members of Starlight seemed to be losing the respect they had developed for me after we rescued Celine. While noble spirits were known for their ability to navigate forests, having the Black World tree on their heels must have pushed them to their limits. I don't think it was necessary. Sorry about that. That tree was much more lively than it was at the academy, Lucia grumbled. What a nightmare. Hey, crybaby, is this thing done moving? Liz asked while rapping a fist against the tree. The way she casually touched a cursed object that had just been wreaking mayhem reminded me of how dulled her sense of danger was. How should I know if it's gonna start moving again? Who do you think I am? Given how it had already revived once after being turned into ash and remade into a new staff, I thought it was totally possible that it might start moving again. In which case, maybe it would be smart to incinerate it again. That was when Citri jogged up, Eliza and Killime following behind. I assumed these three hadn't been targeted by the cursed tree. Citri looked at the Black World tree, standing still as if it really was a mere tree, then at Lucia and the others, then finally at me. Wonderfully done, she cheered. That plan took me by surprise, Krai. It looks like that tree served as an exceptionally powerful mana material manipulator, and though I feared you might keep it going forever, you stopped it over here. What? Oh. Yeah, No way I would let it go on that long. Overwhelmed by her smile, I agreed. I was pretty sure the tree couldn't go on forever. Besides, saying I had kept it going wasn't even true. I hadn't controlled it, It had walked around on its own. I was stunned. Embarrassingly, it seems I was blinded by my fixation on the manipulators. Well, I'll admit I could never use this tree the same way you did, though perhaps I could have made a Citri slime. Those are also capable of absorbing mana material. Please stop, you're going to get us all killed. By stunned, do you mean you got hit in the head? Gathering her breath, Celine moved off the tree she had been leaning against. Is this the end? She asked imploringly, her eyes fixed on me. It would seem a new current had been established. Liz, Celine, Tino, why did everyone think I had these answers? Normally, I'd tell them whatever felt right, but not this time. I was concerned about what might happen if I got it wrong. With a grin, Citri answered for me. I believe we've bought some time, at the very least. I don't know exactly how capable the Black World Tree is of absorbing mana material, but even a temporary decrease in incoming mana material will weaken Shrine of the Effluent God. Likewise, the god should go back to sleep. I'm sure even a divinity would be surprised to see the ley lines altered. Citri always spoke with so much confidence. Citri was the only person I could count on. Yeah, For some reason, my enthusiastic agreement caused Citri to look at me uncertainly. If we have the time, we can also enhance the manipulators. If we take the time to survey and further influence the ley lines, I'm certain the treasure vault will disappear. That's how I understand it, anyway. What do you think, Krai? Does she think I'm some bringer of bad luck? We've done well thus far, so I'm sure we're fine. Don't worry, Citri, you'll do fine. This plan went off without a hitch. You should be proud. That's brutal, Krai baby. I didn't know why, but Liz looked as though she was witnessing an atrocity, and Citri stood in silence. I just tried to offer her some encouragement. What was wrong with that? For the time being, my one concern is Adler's team, who have vanished, Citri said. Their device was destroyed, and I can tell it wasn't the work of the Black World Tree. Because they're Krai's apprentices, I put more faith in them than I should have. Tchem. Adler's group went missing? Why do you sound so happy? Sir. At last, they had had enough of my incompetence. I couldn't really stop myself from being happy when nothing good came from having bandits for apprentices. But they were good people. We could have been friends had they not been bandits. And maybe it was too early to be celebrating. Wait, we don't know for sure, I said. Maybe they abandoned their post and returned to Yggdra. It takes guts to antagonize people who can spy on you from a distance. Sir. I forgot about that. It's easy to forget when it's such a rare power. Right. I clapped my hands and tried to sound as cheerful as I could. There's no need for us to hang around here any longer. The operation was a success, so let's get back to Yggdra. In the deepest reaches of Shrine of the Effluent God, in an altar chamber containing the world's greatest concentration of power, Krai, the masked god, awoke once more. The shrine trembled at the resurgence of his mind. The top-ranking priests, those kneeling nearest the altar, all prostrated. Krai had not meant to awaken. He immediately began to investigate the cause. The first thing he checked was the minute distortions in the priest's prayers. As the divinity was yet to fully manifest, the management of the shrine was being left to the priests, all intelligent beings. In the altar chamber, the priests permitted to be the closest to Krai offered up their prayers, their everything. They were his truest disciples, those who were entrusted with his divine mandates and will until the god regained his body. However, those prayers that were supposed to continue ceaselessly were now showing the slightest distortions. In the presence of the divine, only a considerable emergency would unnerve the top-ranking priests, the top-ranking servants. Krai didn't need to extend his consciousness beyond the shrine's perimeter to understand the cause of the priest's uncertainty. The roaring current of mana material entering the shrine had slackened. Mana material was necessary for any treasure vault. Krai and his servants learned the importance of mana material long ago, before his demise. They also knew that mana material was even more important now. This certainly qualified as something worth waking for. It was through mana material that the treasure vault was composed, the phantoms were born, and Krai would be revitalized. This shrine was not a physical object. If the inbound mana material decreased, it would directly weaken the vault. Without power, the many traps and weapons found in the previous shrine would be unable to reform, servile phantoms would not be created, and Krai's rebirth would be delayed. The shrine burned through a tremendous amount of mana material just by existing. If this reduction in energy continued, Shrine of the Effluent God would be erased sooner or later. Krai was a god, but one still lacking a body. If he were to regain his flesh, he could survive for a period even if the flow of mana material stopped. However, there was nothing he could do as just a dim consciousness. He spoke to the minds of the priests so that he might understand the situation. But they didn't know the source of this emergency. All they knew was that they had faithfully carried out Krai's divine will. There was panic and confusion evident in their reports. They respected Krai, and they feared him. They were highly intelligent and proud, and though they weren't going to betray their god, their reports could be biased. Or perhaps they truly did not understand what was happening. Was it man-made or natural? Was there something they could do to fix it? Still, moving on his own was something Krai needed to avoid more than anything else. He was not omnipotent. He could use only a fraction of his power, and his thoughts were in disarray. The biggest problem, however, was that awakening even in such a fragmentary state placed a large burden on the vault. His mere consciousness used up the same amount of power as 100 of his top servants. Using more power would accelerate the shrine's collapse. He made his decision in an instant. Ascertaining the situation would be left to the priests. Sinking out of consciousness would at least remove any chance of the shrine's immediate disappearance. The powers of this tree were marvelous. Once the buildup of mana material resumed, it wouldn't be long before Krai could regain consciousness once more. To a god, a century or two was nothing more than a brief nap. Just as Krai was about to return to his slumber, there was a crack in the air. Unwanted intruders. From the rift appeared a giant centipede and 3 humans. Because of Krai's awakening, the vault had been unable to maintain the barrier, cutting it off from the outside. On pure reflex, he used his powers to ascertain the intruders. This was the trait that made him Krai, the malign god that had died fighting the world. He sensed their powers, feelings, their natural state, the glimmer of their souls. He caught the stench of monsters exuding from their souls. What's more, he could tell that these were the people who had peered at him earlier. The elite priests all angled their staves at the rude intruders. But Krai ordered them not to attack. There had to be some reason these humans had come to him. He was certain it wasn't another god that had brought them here. He had witnessed their arrival up close and could tell that their spatial leap wasn't the work of a divinity but instead some mutation. The world liked to play these sorts of tricks from time to time. They exuded great excitement and fear. Their powers were nothing remarkable, but if they could brush against Krai's mind once and still dare to stand before him, then they were no doubt among the most extraordinary people this era had to offer. With fiery eyes, the black-haired woman at the front opened her mouth. "Pleasure to meet you, divinity. I don't have much time, so I'll get right to it. We're Nocturnal Parade, this era's lords of monsters. Not sure if you know or understand this, but your back is up against the wall. I'd like to make a deal." What a brazen woman she was if she wanted to attempt to deal with a god. Krai stood far above any human. True, this woman was strong. Humans must have evolved, as her powers greatly surpassed those of Krai's era. But it wasn't enough. He had no reason to bargain with someone of her might. He stared at her, saying nothing. It was one of this era's champions that caused these circumstances, the woman said with a big smile. "I'll give you information. In exchange, I'd like some troops, an undefeatable army." Fascinating. He had planned to sleep, but now he changed his mind. Deep in that woman's eyes were flickers of fear. But it wasn't Krai she feared, it was that champion or whoever. Making deals with a human was typically beneath his consideration, but that changed if someone more fearsome than a god was lurking out there. Let us see what this champion is capable of.